First Comic-Con! Say hi!
Say hi, everybody!
Oh my god! You freaked me out. That's so crazy. Hey, how's it
man?
going,
How you
man?
Okay, Ross, what's
Hey,
up, man?
How's it going?
What held you back the most in becoming a successful artist? Or what do you wish you knew
Right.
back then?
I wish I could just do me, right? I feel like in the industry, we have references of what looks good or what art is supposed to be like. But if I would to go back, I was like, hey, just draw what you want to draw. If you want to do characters, do characters. If you like environment, do environment. You don't have to be like, try everything and cater to a certain industry. I believe that we are best when we are ourselves. Keep an open mind and try everything, but at the end of the day, do what feels right.
What's up, man? Can you do the interview now?
Yeah.
Okay, what held you back the most? Okay.
One more time, attendees.
Okay. What held you back the most in becoming a successful artist?
There's a lot of different things. So I think what held me back the most was fearing the inability to do what I wanted to do in my head. So making mistakes. I think that's kind of a generic answer, but when you're doing something as an artist and you're trying to learn something and you don't get it, it's like you don't want to show anyone because, oh, it doesn't look good enough, it doesn't look good enough. So you get in that kind of destructive cycle of making it want to look good and not seeing the real purpose of what it takes to succeed and get past those issues.
Do you mean just your fear of making mistakes, like technically, or the fear of drawing what you want to draw?
At first, technically,
Okay.
because then that pretty much does lead to drawing what you want to draw. You know, without the ability to learn how to draw, or not learn how to draw, without the ability to draw what it is you want to draw, form and all that stuff, then you can't actually manipulate it to create an illustration or an image that is your interpretation of the world or your interpretation of the subject matter.
Hey, Marshall.
Yeah,
You want to be in my video?
sure.
All right, here's the first question.
Okay,
What held you back the most in becoming a successful artist?
that is the easiest question in the world to answer. The thing that held me back the most, well, it was not energy, it was not ambition, it was a lack of training. It was not having any idea about anatomy or perspective. Asking teachers, how do you solve this problem? They didn't know. That was the biggest thing, is that I was asking everybody, how do you draw like the old masters, like comic book artists, like animators? Almost no teachers knew the answer to that question.
What held you back the most in becoming a professional
My
artist?
self-doubt, comparing myself to others.
Self-doubt.
That's not a bad question, and self-doubt is not a bad answer.
That's
I
true.
was thinking too when it came out of my mouth.
Self-doubt gives you energy that I might not be able to do it, and there's a little fear in that, and a little fear is good. Because a little fear means that it rises to the adrenaline rush that says, I've got to make this work. So yeah, a little bit of self-doubt, but not so much that it's, I can't do this, just enough to say, maybe I can't do it. That's, yeah.
Hi there.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
How's it going? Welcome.
How you doing?
Good. I'm just doing another commission right now.
Oh, cool.
So, first question, what held you back the most in becoming a successful artist?
I think what I wish I knew more at the beginning of being an artist was having the confidence of simplicity. I think we, as artists, when we're younger, tend to focus on the details of things or looking for quick solutions to stuff. So I think if I kind of looked at the big picture, kept things simple, and understood that those fundamentals and foundations were the most important, and really investing even more into that, I think it would have continued to really help solidify, but gain even faster knowledge over time. But that's something I didn't really realize until later on. And so by then, I was like, okay, I realized what I gotta do, switch my gears, and went back into it. So I think if I was younger and I focused on that aspect first, the basics, the construction, because when you're younger, you get bored by that. And you're like, why am I even doing this? I want to go to this, incredible rendering and stuff like that. But it wasn't as important.
That was exactly my problem.
Yeah, definitely.
I was just rendering for years. I got good at rendering.
Oh, absolutely.
But there's so many errors underneath.
You don't retain that information. It's hard to reproduce it quickly. And you sit there for hours and yeah, you produce something at the end of it that looks potentially visually nice. but the adaptation, the skill that I can reuse as a communication device
Yeah.
really wasn't there.
So what are the most important fundamentals you feel people should
Shape and forms.
shape and form?
From the shape goes into proportion. The two aspects in design or art that you need as an equation is shape and proportion. So everything that we draw has to have a solid proportion to make it look accurate to what you're seeing. But the shape gives you the three dimensions to make that accuracy stand. So if any of those two things are lacking, then your potential designs or drawings and sketches could fall apart. Now you might think, well, I can continue adding more information on top of that, details as we're saying, but it doesn't save it because that underlying foundation of that proportion and shape is weak. So then anything on top doesn't stay on top either.
Awesome. I forgot the questions.
There you go, it's a good interview.
Yeah, I'm a professional.
Yeah.
I do this all the time. Okay, what held you back the most in becoming a successful artist?
Well, now new kids have the internet. Back in my time, I'm all good. No internet. I used to make photocopies, use vellum, so I can ink over. So like now you can just download stuff, like and just print it out on Blue Line. Back in the day, for us even to show the portfolios, we had to make long lines. Now you just submit it faster, Or like I used to cross the border to make it on time to FedEx so I can send it to Marvel in New York.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
So you had to hustle more.
Yes. Yeah, a lot more.
I didn't have the same difficulties a lot of people have. I had that lucky break when I was like 14. I just started doing art, and it has never been difficult since, except for, I guess, like, I want to paint that way, and it took a month to learn how to paint that way or something.
Okay. So what held you back the most when you were trying to grow as an artist or become a professional?
I think what held me back the most was not knowing where to go to learn. Because where I was from, it was a city that had art in it, but it didn't have art schools in it. So I wasn't really sure what an art school was. And colleges offered art classes, and so I assumed that that's what it was until I went to those, and I realized these classes aren't going to get me anywhere. And I had to finally learn what that meant to go find that school. And luckily, while I was a professional skateboarder, I was on tour and I came across art schools that I'd never seen before. And that kind of led me into the atelier system. Otherwise, I would never have known that existed at all.
What do you wish you knew back when you were starting out, or like the thing that held you back the most?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I wish I knew was the concept of drawing through your shapes and getting that, because I never used to do that. I was always just going from one side, popping to the next, and then I wish I understood construction and form. I didn't understand it, so a lot of my drawings, they always fell apart. I wish I knew to study that when I was like 18 in high school or after high school.
Yeah. What held you back the most in becoming a successful artist, or like what do you wish you knew back then that you know now?
I think I used to be a lot more shy, so I think like being a successful artist means you have to really put yourself out there, really get to know new people, network, talk to people. So that took me a few years of getting out of my shell and trying to be just a more outgoing person.
What held you back the most in becoming a successful artist, or what do you wish you knew back when you were starting?
That it will take a lot of hard work just to make it in this industry.
Was it frustrating or what?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think because you didn't really have an outlet or a community, because I started back, I think right when the internet was getting, popular. So the community wasn't necessarily as available. I had to do a lot more foot travel to make it to meet a lot of other creators and build that camaraderie. I tell students all the time now that you guys really have great access. I mean, at a click of a button, you can get online with some of your favorite creators, even with what you're doing. It's like none of that stuff was available back then. I had to go to a library, or if it was online, it was very scarce. So now it's readily available. But I think that's, it's all relative too, because a lot of these students, young artists, they don't know what it's like to not have this.
Yeah, it might kind of spoil people a
It
little
does
bit,
spoil
you know?
them, exactly.
Get used to getting it easily.
Yes, yes. But I think overall, like, to sum it up, that I think if I knew that it was going to really be about some serious hard work, which I was okay to do, but I was thinking, okay, hard work for a year and I should be okay. No, it's hard work for maybe 4 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand that. That's where it all kind of changed for me.
All right, so what held you back the most in becoming a successful artist? Or what do you wish you knew back then when you were starting out?
When I was starting out, I actually had no formal training as an artist. I have a degree in computer science from Purdue, then I went to NYU to study film, but I always drew during my spare time. And one good thing I did was I had mentors who were professionals in the comic book industry, but I wish I had some formal training. I wish I did take some art classes. I think that did hold me back. Even though I started working in comics professionally straight out of NYU, like a month out of NYU, I think if I had formal training, I could have been working, right when I was in college, But one good thing was I always drew. I drew a ton, but the lack of formal training, I think, held me back.
Did you study a lot of other artists?
Oh yeah, I study on my own. I studied a lot of artists. I read a lot of books, and back then when I was in school, I didn't have like cool stuff like this YouTube channel to help me out. So you guys are super lucky.
What are you working on?
Working on a caricature for a guy.
Oh, it's like a robot caricature?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what held you back the most when you were in becoming a successful artist?
When I started, I think I wish I had more mentors nearby, because where I live, it was really hard to find those, or really hard to get in touch with them, or people can give me more advice or things. Oh, Marcelo, you can fix this or fix that. So I think.
Whoops.
Oops. Did you record that? I'm nervous.
Perfect. No, that's perfect. Makes the
I'm not a
video
TV guy. Again?
Again.
Again. Damn it. Mostly that. We did have a lot of schools, so like in Brazil, only right now we have some specific schools for art schools. So when I was a kid, or when I was young, we didn't have those. Like, it's really hard to get access to them.
What held you back the most when you were starting out, or like what do you wish you knew back then that you know now?
It probably is not trying to hide my art too much. I was very precious of it, very protective, like, oh, I don't want people to steal my ideas. Not that they're any good, but you have this like weird idea, like being extra possessive of things. I realized when I started posting a lot online that it was very freeing. It was like, oh, okay, I'm not attached to this piece anymore. I can move on, I can make better stuff, I can try stuff. So it was almost like rediscovering my own stuff by letting go.
Yeah.
It was a turning point and really pivotal for me to start growing. And I owe the internet my growth because I don't know if it's true for you, but for me,
yeah. YouTube pretty much made me, so.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
As much as, I don't want to say it, I'm absolutely like in debt to like Instagram for all the connections I've made, all the input, like all the feedback, good and bad.
Yeah.
It's been really helpful. So that's one thing I'm trying to still adopt, like show stuff, like post, don't be afraid. Yeah, fear was big. Fear of like looking bad or looking naive or amateur, that was big too. I was trying to be like, oh no, I know what I'm doing, kind of showing myself bigger than I am, and now I'm totally the opposite. Like I'm showing all kinds of imperfections. So yeah, that'll be one thing I would say to myself.
And was that limiting you in more like getting discovered, or it actually limited the quality of your work?
Both.
Both?
I think both. I mean, the discovery part is kind of like a byproduct. I never really put it as a goal. I think now more than ever I'm conscious of it, like what's out there with all the platforms. But it was definitely holding me back in terms of ideas, and I wasn't producing a lot of work because I was like so stuck on particular pieces. Yeah, so that'll be my long advice.
Okay, no, that was great.
Like no fear.
Hey man, my name's Stan.
So what held you back the most in becoming a successful artist?
I think the most thing that holds you back the most is like yourself, like trying to see if you always second guess yourself, thinking if you're good enough or if you're not good enough or like all these other things. And there's a certain level of like immaturity and that you have to kind of build into and kind of fall into. So when you like look back, there's just like a matter of being scared of certain things, being scared of drawing in front of somebody, being scared of like putting something out that you don't think is good enough. And those are all the things that like I think held back development as coming up as an artist. And then also just like a lot of just self-degrading of your own stuff and not believing in yourself, you know?
Yeah. So it would hold back your creativity as well as just...
Yeah, everything, because you never think anything's good, you know? And you never think you're good enough. And I think it's more mental than I think it is anything else.
More confidence?
More confidence, right? It's something you have to get. But I don't want to make you think that like, that is something that you should just, some people just have it. And some people have to kind of like with age, just kind of comes with them, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Do you think it comes with getting good? Like, it's
I think,
easy to have...
obviously where people start being into what you're doing, then obviously that's that self-confirmation that you were looking for, that you are actually doing something that people are into, and that obviously raises your confidence, where you become more confident in what you do, and I think that's a lot of it too. So you know,
okay.
So yeah,
awesome.
You know, when I was a student, I just focused on being a student, just trying to be a really great student. And then once I graduated, I had a big kind of dip, you know, with my career, because I didn't think about trying to be a professional until I already was, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of connections, there's a lot of knowledge about, you know, what studios are out there and things like that, which I would totally look up next time, you know, if I had to do it all over again, kind of thing.
So probably the biggest thing that held me back was trying to approach line of work and projects because of the glamour and the cool factor of them, and not necessarily what I actually wanted to draw, what I enjoyed drawing and painting, working on a day-to-day basis. So I mean, I wanted to go into video games and film and like Pixar style film because I was young and I just thought that was really cool, but I did not enjoy 3D modeling and working on the computer and whatnot. And then when I stopped doing that and got into illustration, I approached Magic the Gathering and Blizzard and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. And again, found myself not really enjoying the day-to-day aspect of it, of drawing monsters and all that kind of stuff. And I was more attracted to the cool factor of working on Magic and that. So what held me back was just not pursuing what I actually wanted to do instead of what I thought was cool. I feel like a lot of people do that and don't, so.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you gotta make money, right?
Yeah, well, it wasn't even about the money, it was more, it was more just about, I don't know how else to explain it, about just, you know, thinking something's neat versus actually having a passion for something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
My number one advice for somebody regarding what holds you back is self-assessment of your own talent. And what that means is, if you feel like you're not particularly talented because you compare your work to people that maybe not necessarily have been trained, but they seem to have a grasp of what you think of as art, what you think of as visually appealing, don't gauge success by somebody's ability right out of the gate. Nor should you gauge your ability as an artist by what you can do as soon as somebody puts a pencil in your hand. Talent is a very, very poor gauge of what somebody's ability as an artist really is, because they haven't been tested. Talent is just natural ability, and that's wonderful. Maybe it gives them a push as soon as they begin really training themselves to be an artist. But it doesn't last very long. That initial thrust, that natural natural ability, it'll only take you so far. Really what is a better gauge of your success as an artist is how willing you are to make mistakes, how willing you are to screw up, to risk things, to fail your way upward. That's really the only way to get anywhere, really, is by constant testing yourself, constantly. If at the end of the day you've made every mistake you can possibly make and you still love drawing, then odds are there isn't really anything that can hold you back. There's a really, really good chance that you can make it in this industry simply on dedication alone. And that's probably the biggest thing that I would say was that held me back, especially early on in my career.
So I think the thing that held me back the most when I first started out was I started with digital and I kept rendering everything to such a crazy degree, and I would go on Photoshop and I would render every little detail of a landscape painting, and I'd sit and I'd zoom in and I'd keep zooming, and I was like, okay, well, make sure the bark on this tree has every single detail, and I focused way too intensely on details rather than like the overall composition or the overall picture.
Yeah.
And I just got super carried away with every single detail of things.
Hey guys, in the comments, let me know what is holding you back that you need to change. Could be something that you learned from this video just now, or something you've been working on for a while. Leave a comment and stick around. I got more videos like this coming soon.
Okay, say bye-bye.